these somewhere. 2019. If only we knew. 2019 was certainly a year, folks. We had a government shutdown, the Amazon was burning, politics were politicking. But more importantly than all of that, we had a lot of really good movies come out. All jokes aside, 2019 was an impactful year, and there's some politics involved with what I'm going to be talking about today, but for the sake of argument, let's keep the politics mostly out of it and just kind of talk about movies and the situations surrounding the movies. Okay? 2019 was the year of Parasite, a movie that would have everybody reading subtitles, swept the nation, and would eventually go on to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards. We also got some big movies from A24 from some of their most standout directors, hitters like The Lighthouse from Robert Eggers, Uncut Gems from the Safdie brothers, and Midsommar. We got this movie from Ari Aster. 2019 was also the year of franchises culminating in epic finales, with the Skywalker Saga, the Infinity Saga, and Game of Thrones all coming to a close, for better or worse, in 2019. We had feature films from some of today's most acclaimed directors, with Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Greta Gerwig's Little Women, and Sam Mendes's 1917. All of this preamble to say, 2019, we were eating so good. And I was definitely aware of it too. You know, I would look at my Letterboxd list, you know, around the midway and the end point of the year and think, man, this has been an all-time year. You know, we got so much stuff on the horizon. Like, the next couple years are about to be awesome, right? But like everyone else at the end of 2019, I really had no idea how much I was going to go on to appreciate all of these movies in the months and years to come. For me, 2018 was the year that I started collecting movies and started making going to the theater more of a priority. I'd been a movie fan all my life, but that was the year that I really, activated. So naturally, I look back on 2018 and 2019 with a degree of fondness that I don't think will ever be replicated in the years to come. Contrasted to the absolute wasteland the theaters would become in 2020, in 2019, we had 9 movies make $1 billion at the box office worldwide, with Avengers Endgame making $3 billion. It's a lot of money. Theaters went from being as lively as they possibly could have been to being shut down for the foreseeable future. Now, obviously, box office does not equal good, but this just goes to show that theaters went from being as lively as they possibly could have been to there being actual real conversations about whether movie theaters would ever be a thing again. Spoiler alert, they always will be a thing. Looking back, 2019 had an air of finality to it. It's the end of a decade, you know? The beginning of something new. Or the beginning of nothing at all. The multiple franchises ending that I mentioned earlier really helps to illustrate this kind of subconscious notion. In 2020, I saw 2 movies in theaters, one of which was Tenet, which was Nolan's sacrificial guinea pig, which would be the sort of litmus test to decide whether or not theaters could be viable during the pandemic. I don't really know if that paid out for him. And the other one was Empire Strikes Back for the 40th anniversary, which was pretty sweet. But contrasted to the 20+ movies that I saw in theaters in 2019, things were looking pretty bleak. You know, just when I was starting to hit my stride, things came to a screeching halt. 2019 was the last year the movies would get made without restrictions, delays, having to quarantine people, making the decision whether or not to premiere the movie day and date on streaming services as well as in theaters, and the worst offender of all, just movies about the pandemic. I mean, terrible. The end of this decade will forever represent a shift in how movies would be made going forward. With everybody stuck at home, streaming became king. It felt like studios recognized this almost right away and started fumbling in their pockets for anything they might have ready to go to occupy the suddenly very popular home theater space.
Oh my God. I am never gonna financially recover from this.
So regardless of quality, things that might get overlooked today were views behemoths. Looking at you, Tiger King. On the flip side, this also caused people to just watch the same old stuff that they'd been watching all their life. Shows like The Office are a pretty good example. Nothing new was coming out, so this led people to go back to the well and catch up on stuff that they'd been missing. This isn't inherently bad on its own, but there was definitely a hole where new content should be. And it made people much more forgiving of mediocre shows or movies, so long as they were new mediocre shows and movies. This caused me to catch up on some of 2019's titles that I'd missed out on, adding to an already lengthy list of quality films. Still to this day, I look at that list and I think, man, we really should have appreciated this more, because we did not know what was coming. So at this point, I feel like earlier I acknowledged a lot of the big hits of the year, but I'd also like to take some time to shine a light on some underseen or underappreciated movies from that year that I really do think deserve more views. First one is Cold Pursuit with Liam Neeson. I went and saw this with a buddy. It was early January. Didn't have much expectations at all. I don't even think I watched the trailer. All I knew is that it was being advertised as a sort of Taken in the snow. There was a lot of Liam Neeson Taken clones being spewed out in the years following Taken, and this just looked like another one of them. While it's kind of that, it's also not. There's a lot more going on. The marketing did this zero favors. It's actually a really funny movie with a darkly comedic tone that sort of lends itself to more of a Fargo kind of vibe. Highly recommend this one. The next one is Ad Astra with Brad Pitt. This was kind of marketed as just like another generic sort of Brad Pitt goes to space movie. But it's a lot more introspective than that. It's very bleak, and Brad Pitt is sort of like this automaton. He doesn't have a lot of personality to him. But as he ventures further and further into space in search of his dad, he actually finds himself becoming more and more human than he ever was, despite having left all of humanity behind. It's a really thoughtful movie, really good, and perhaps not what people were expecting, but I think that is only to its benefit. And lastly, I just want to talk about Color Out of Space real quick. This is an H.P. Lovecraft adaptation starring Nicolas Cage, hot off the heels of his memorable role in Mandy from the previous year. It's bizarre, it's surreal, it's disturbing, it's got some really gross body horror. There is a vibrant display of Technicolor cosmic horror for cult genre fans to enjoy here. It's very good. It's very much a love it or hate it thing, but if this seems like something you'd be into, definitely check it out. However, one movie from that year is my absolute favorite and tops all of the other ones that I've mentioned so far. That movie is Celine Sciamma's Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Set in the 18th century, it's about a painter who's commissioned to paint a wedding portrait of a young lady on fire, and they eventually fall in love and share a limited amount of time together before being forced back into the rigid confines of their lives, as imposed on them by the societal restraints of the era. It's a beautiful movie, well shot and acted, and just ends with such a punch to the gut that If You're Me is the thing you look for in movies that sets them apart from their contemporaries. So yeah, those are my thoughts. 2019, all-time year. Due in large part to not only what followed this year, but the actual quality of the movies that came out in that year itself, I can confidently say that 2019 is the best year for movies, maybe that I've been alive. Cases could be made for years like 2014 and 2016, but for me they just don't quite measure up. What are your favorite movies of 2019? What are some big ones that I missed? Do you disagree and think there's a better year than 2019? I'm interested to hear, so leave a comment down below, like the video if you're into that sort of thing, and subscribe. Remember to take care and watch more movies.